record to is about.
And we welcome you to this interview here. Eric Lopez alongside Bryson Turner on the Black and Gold Banneret. Joining us now, she's going to be inducted into the UCF Athletics Hall of Fame on November the 10th, part of a big inaugural Big 12 class. First UCF Hall of Fame class ever to be inducted during the Big 12 era. She was a star player, three-time All-American honoree, led UCF to the American Conference Championship in 2014, was inducted into the Ring of Honor last year at the UCF Volleyball, and will be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year, rightfully so. Speak of DeLaina Sarden joining us here. Hey, your resume keeps growing and growing.
I know. It's crazy to think about. It's crazy to think about sometimes.
So take us through this. November 10th is the big night. Has it hit you yet that you're going to be joining this illustrious Hall of Fame class? I believe only about 90 some people have ever been inducted in the university's history. So that's a big honor there, but just has it sunk in yet?
Well, you know what, to be honest with you, Eric, I think that intro is really just what made it sink in for me, to be completely honest. I think, getting the call was obviously very exciting. Like, I owe Carlos McCants a lot of credit in terms of just how he's been working just with the institution and how they've been growing and just helping especially female student athletes get a little bit more acknowledgement. Obviously, the work that you guys have been doing as well of just kind of bringing people more into the history of UCF because we have grown so much. But I think definitely as we start to get closer and closer to it, it's really started to sink in. So even as we were talking before kind of the interview officially got started, I got to think about my speech and what that's going to look like, who I'm going to thank. I mean, it's so many people that played a part in that. I mean, I'm only as great as the people around me. So I'm excited. And, I got my little UCF sweatshirt on today. So now I'm like really starting to like get into, oh my gosh, this is happening. It's going down next week. Like, it's going to be just a really great time.
Take me through the process of when you found out that you were going to get inducted.
Oh my gosh. So it was really funny. Obviously, in the work that I do, people are talking to me constantly. So, you're always on your phone. And from that standpoint, there are some people that you just prioritize, right? So as soon as they reach out to you, you try to make sure that, you get to them quickly. And then there are some people where you may push it out a couple of weeks, just depending upon what they need. And so I'll never forget, it was a Tuesday night. I was sitting on my couch downstairs watching TV, and Carlos texted me and said, hey, do you have time to chat tomorrow? Now, again, I told you, you've got that priority list. So anytime Carlos reaches out to me, I always try to make it a priority to get back to him. So I said, yeah, tomorrow, 3:00, that's all you. And so I, again, have no idea what this conversation is going to be about. I don't know if it's about career. I don't know if it's about a job opportunity because I'm a recruiter. So people will talk to me about all types of things. So, fast forward to Wednesday, and, I call him and we're just chopping it up. And then he says, but the most exciting news that I have for you is that they're going to be inducting you into the Hall of Fame. And I just like started crying. Like, I was sitting right here because it's my little home office. You can't see the whole thing, obviously, but I'm sitting right here and I just started crying because it has been such a year for me, like just personally, that I had to make some really tough decisions. And so from that standpoint, it was just more confirmation that, DeLaina, you are on the right track. You're doing what you were called to do. And even when you have to make hard decisions, like, you're always going to be rewarded in some way to know that this is where you're meant to be. And for me, it's obviously an incredible accomplishment to be inducted because, as you mentioned, only a handful of people get that. You don't go to college thinking that that's where your legacy is going to take you. So that was already huge. But then also, just reflecting on where UCF is right now. I mean, as you talked about entering the Big 12 era, I mean, that's when I was getting recruited to UCF. We were in Conference USA. We were, kind of in that first wave of conference realignment. So looking at where our home was going to get, I mean, and even Todd and I, in my conversations, we thought we were going to the Big East. So going into the American, I mean, a completely newly formed conference was like really the cusp of where athletics is today. And so it's just kind of ironic to me that the work that I do is to help institutions, help conferences find leaders that can allow them to transform and transition into a new space. So it was kind of like a full circle moment for me. So just getting that call from Carlos and then setting up when that call was going to be, because also for my 30th birthday, which incredible year that 30 has been for me. But for my 30th birthday, I was also going to be buying a new car. So the day that Terry was going to call me was the day that I was going to be buying this new car, and my dad was going to be with me. So it was really exciting because I didn't tell my parents. So then everyone kind of found out at the same time. So we're at the dealership, and I was like, "Oh, Dad, I'm getting this FaceTime call." Naturally, like your dad would do. He was like, "Oh, okay, you can take it." And I was like, "No, no, no, I want you to be next to me when I take the call." So it's also his reaction because I wore my dad's number in college. He played football at a D3 school out in Kansas. And so then 17 has a lot of sentimental value to me. And so it was just really cool to get that call from Carlos, to be with my dad at the dealership buying this like big girl car. So it was just kind of like a really exciting time for me, just in terms of like, you make these decisions so young in life, but when you have the purpose of why you're making the decisions, and just, you can say it's strategic to an extent, but it's really more so about what you're being called to and what makes sense for you. To me, it was just amazing. So that was kind of the process, and then getting the call from Terry, and just kind of where we are today.
So take me back to that early 2010s time period, because UCF volleyball was a much different program back then than
Yes.
it was. Only Jenny Frank had been an AVCA honorable mention All-American at that point back in 2003. So take me through what it was like kind of coming into a UCF volleyball kind of before the upswing that occurred over the course of the 2010s decade.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And Bryson, to be honest with you, I think, when I talked about purpose earlier, that's where alignment is really important. So a lot of people don't know my story before coming to UCF. So I actually didn't start playing volleyball until I was 16. So you start talking about being later into just kind of like where you're supposed to be. And I played for one of the top clubs. I mean, they're one of the best clubs in the nation now, A5. But a lot of my teammates were going to like Michigan and like really big programs. And so from that standpoint, again, I was thinking about, okay, this is an opportunity for me to go to school out of state, which was not necessarily something that I was going to have the luxury to do, whether I had to apply for the Hope Scholarship or things of that nature. So first you think about the opportunity that it is in general. I had always wanted to go to school in Florida. So when Michelle found me at 16, when my footwork was bad and I was like inefficient as a hitter, it was someone that said, there is potential here. And so for me, that was a really huge deal because I knew I had the makings to be great, but I really needed to be surrounded by people that believed in me and were really going to coach and mentor and develop me to actually coming into that image that I saw of myself. So when I was going through the recruiting process, yes, it would be awesome to be a part of an already established program where you're just continuing to contribute to a legacy. But for me, it was going to be, this is something where I can really be a trailblazer. Like volleyball is a new sport to me. I'm very passionate about it. I'm very excited about really the vision that Todd and Michelle were selling to me of, if we can get a player like you can really help us to attract other girls that are going to be able to build UCF volleyball into what we all know it can be. So really going through that early recruiting period, I actually closed my recruiting earlier. My club coaches were not excited about that because they were like, DeLaina, like you're just starting on your journey. Like you don't know what schools could be interested in you. And I was just like, there's something about the coaching staff, about the leadership at UCF that I feel like is just a really good fit for not only my athletic ability, but just the woman that I was becoming and who I wanted to grow into and be. So during that time, it was just really exciting. I think in 2011 is when UCF had actually beat Georgia in the Liberty Bowl. And then I want to say that it was either 2010, well, I think it was 2010 when basketball had beat Florida. And so then like the whole tagline of like UCF at Gainesville had started. And so for me, it was just a really exciting time of like, you have an opportunity to be a part of something that you don't know whether it's going to be great or not, or where it's going to go, but to really believe in a vision and like buy into that and be a part of other people also trying to forward that vision, to me just made it a more holistic decision in terms of not only are you going to grow athletically, but the people you're going to be around, like-minded people that all have ambition and aspirations to be something greater than they ever thought they could be. To me, that was just a place where I felt like I could really grow and thrive. So that was kind of where I was mentally at that time, because like I said, I was 16. So it's like, this is a big decision for me. And I just want to go to play. Like no one goes to sit. And so I wanted to make sure that the vision that they had, not only for the program, but for me, was one that I felt like they were actually going to live up to, because a lot of people their collegiate experience changes from their recruiting experience. And for me, I'm one of the fortunate people where I felt like every year just got better and better and better.
You mentioned those other players that you were talking about. I mean, back then, like, we talk about this day and age, we had the McKenna Melvilles and Amber Olsons and Anne-Marie Watsons. Back then for you, it was you, Kaylee Scream, Meredith Murphy, Angelica
Yep.
Crump. What was it like to kind of work with players like that? Because I looked through looking through the record book when we did our top 100 list, like those names popped up
Yeah.
a good bit on there.
Oh, well, I mean, it was awesome. You could tell that they were really trying to assemble a team. And so they were being very strategic in what they needed in each position. What I really liked about UCF in terms of my conversations with Todd and Michelle is that they were really trying to run a middle dominant offense, which means you actually need all of the players. A lot of times you see a lot of teams being carried by their pin hitters. But for your first option to be a middle, that means your defense is on point, your passers are together, your blockers are in sync. I mean, that's a total team concept, and it allows more girls to play, because if you can run a middle dominant offense effectively, then you can run a 6-2, which means you're getting more girls into the rotation. You're constantly varying your offensive attacks. Everyone's an option, so it puts a lot of stress on your opponent, and that was something that I was really excited about. And so when I would go to games, actually the first time I had seen UCF play, they were at a tournament at UAB, and they were playing I want to say they were playing UT Chattanooga. But anyway, from that standpoint, I was really starting to see the pieces that they were missing from just a holistic standpoint. And so Meredith Murphy is really my intro to a libero that loved being a libero. She was the strongest piece for us in the backcourt. And so again, as a middle, my passes have to be perfect. And even if it's not coming to me, then that gives you an option, because it makes that middle on the other side have to honor you first and respect you. And then if you've got some fast outsides or a pin hitter, like a right side, that just really seals the deal for you. And at that time was also the evolution of the right side hitter. So a lot of times you started to see more middles transitioning out there, or girls that could hit, swings off of 1 foot. And so even as you look at the way our team evolved, my junior year is when we really started to get more transfers in. And then now as you look at the landscape, the transfer portal is insane. Everybody's desire to get old and stay old is a lot of times what helps you to really be able to onboard and train some of your younger players, so that when their time is called, they're ready to step in. So for me, it was really indicative of where the industry was going in all sports. But being able to play with, Angelica, but she went by Jelly. She's one of my best friends to this day. I mean, she just moved back to Atlanta. She's actually a fashion designer. She's going to be designing my Hall of Fame dress. So that has been an incredible process to grow through with her. So it was really cool because, again, these are not your teammates, these are your sisters. So also graduating and seeing where each of us have gone in our lives, to me, has been a really great piece. And that takes intentionality. Like, it's not just about getting the best players. It's about making sure that you have chemistry, that you want to go to battle with, you want to fight through with people. And even, people like Lauren Corey, Marie Ritarova. I mean, the list goes on in terms of people that were just significant contributors to our team. So for me, being alongside what I thought were those powerhouses was just like what UCF wanted to do with me, is attract other girls. Those were the girls that attracted me, because I felt like the talent was there. They just needed a couple different pieces to really take them to the next level.
Now, I want to go back. You just said, or recently there, that you started playing volleyball at 16?
Yes.
You can't just say that without telling how, what? Because you fooled me, because when I saw you play in the court, you looked like you played for a long time. So clearly,
Yeah, like,
you
man,
figured
Eric,
this
let me
sport
tell
out or
you
what?
this. So my dream, actually being from Georgia, was to be a softball player in college. So I started playing
I
softball.
knew you and I had get along,
Yeah,
like we're spirits.
because that's one of your sports too. So I had started playing softball in 7th grade. I'm gonna be honest with you, I wasn't the best softball player. I was okay, like I could hold my own, but it wasn't really, the sport for me. But I was still very much committed to that was gonna be my dream, especially SEC softball, like seeing Oklahoma, seeing programs today. Well, I know Oklahoma's Big 12 technically, but coming into the SEC, seeing programs like that, Tennessee, Georgia, that's what I kind of grew up watching. So many people do not know this. I actually was cut from the softball team in high school. So from that standpoint, I was just kind of figuring out what my next thing was going to be. Naturally, with my height, everyone wanted me to play basketball. And I think women's basketball is an incredible sport. I love the way that it's growing, but it just really was not the sport for me. And so I was very fortunate to have a coach in high school, Coach Naomi Hudson. And she was like, look, DeLaina, you cannot just not be involved in something. Like, we need to find a sport for you. If it's not basketball, let's try something else. And so one of the things she brought to me was volleyball. I actually didn't know a lot about it. All the women in my family played played basketball because we're all very tall. I'm fortunate to from a very tall family. So on Fridays, after we would finish our mile, my coach would take me into the auxiliary gym and do drills with me. And they were drills that she taught me how to teach my mom how to do. So then when I went home, I could work with my mom on it. And like, I just felt like my family really got into it. Like, my dad was super supportive of it. Like, he was helping me like develop my upper body strength. So I was like serving beach volleyballs over our pool. We had an above ground pool. So it was like helping me kind of like develop my arm strength there. And it was just a sport that I naturally took to. So from Coach Hudson, she told me to try out for the high school team. So I said, okay. I tried out for the high school team, made that, played on the JV team, and then occasionally would play on varsity. So that was going really well. And then from there, they were like, well, you're really good at high school volleyball, so you should consider playing club. And so I was like, okay, like, as you know about me, Eric, I'm a very go with the flow type of person. So if it sounds right, I'm at least going to try it. And it was literally history ever since. So right at that time at 16, they had just started GA5, which was a sister club of A5, but it was closer to me location wise. So, my mom was like, look, before we haul off across Atlanta and fight Atlanta traffic, let's see if you even really like this. And so from GA5, it just took off. And then next thing you know, they were like, you have to play at A5. It was perfect because I got my car so I could transport myself. And so then next thing you know, I was playing for A5, which was great because that's actually the club that Michelle wanted me to play for as well. And she was like, if you go to A5, I think they'll develop you really well. And your learning curve coming into college will be much shorter, where really all we'll have to do is focus on fine tuning you, not really starting from ground zero. And it was perfect. I mean, the culture at A5, the mentality, the girls that I was playing around, like, my level of play elevated significantly. So it was almost like coming to UCF was perfect because I knew the basics of volleyball. So now I just had to focus on what was the way in which UCF needed me to play, and then how could we bring everyone collectively there. So yeah, like I said, a lot of people have no idea that I didn't start playing until 16, but that is when I started my volleyball journey.
Crazy. That's wild. First of all, what is it about volleyball players like Amory Watson played softball, McKenna Melville played softball. So I don't know. it's interesting insurance, but have you ever thought about what if you didn't get that like suggestion to go into volleyball and try volleyball, what you would be doing?
Oh, yeah, I think about it all the time because it's just like, I mean, like I said, college, being a student athlete is amazing. It's an opportunity that not many people get, but it's really more so about the doors that can open from there. Because not only do I talk about what a stellar coaching staff that we had, our academic support services or our student athlete support services, I mean, in the work that I do now, you don't find many departments that were running on all cylinders the way that we were, whether it was Brad Strickland, Kimya Massey, Marcus Sedbury, Corey Pinkett. I mean, you look at their resumes right now, they're all at big time places doing big time things. And so when you think about just kind of the cradle that UCF is, it will blow your mind. And so when I think about my own personal journey, because of how great the staff was in pouring into me and developing me as a person, that's what inspired me to start my career within college athletics. So I was a graduate assistant at Michigan State. I was working in academic advising and student athlete development. And then from there, I got my first full-time job at the University of Wisconsin, working in their Office of Student Athlete Development, which then turned into career leadership. And then from there is when I was recruited down to Parker. Parker Executive Search had actually done both of the searches for Todd Stansbury and Danny White. So for me, I got to see firsthand how the right leadership at the right time can be transformational for an institution. So if there was ever a way to give back to student athletes and hopefully what I would say is impact the masses, right? You can do it from a campus, and that's great. Some people choose to do that. But for me, it was like, if I have a hand in helping Washington to find their next athletic director as they transition into the Big Ten, or helping Haverford College up in Pennsylvania find their next athletic director, those are things that people won't remember me being a part of that process, but those student athletes will remember the experience that they had that can hopefully transition into the same way it's been for me. So for me, I think about it all the time, because if I hadn't have gone to UCF, and I really take this to heart, built by UCF is a for real thing for me. And when I look at the reason why I wanted to go to UCF in the beginning, and no less than 10 years later, we're now the Power Five conference that everyone believed we can be, to me, that's a full circle moment. So yes, I think about that all the time. And even when you look in my office, like I'm looking at a UCF sign there, I'm looking at my jersey, I'm looking at a 2015 back-to-back championship poster for UCF football. I've got my degree behind me. I've got a UCF flag in my front yard. Like everywhere that I go, you know that I am a proud UCF Knight. So it's one of the best things that has ever happened to me, and it's something that I think about all the time.
You mentioned what you do with Parker Executive Search. I just wanted to ask, who would you say is your favorite search that you've gotten over the course? Like, what's your favorite connection that you've made?
Oh, Bryson, you put me on the spot. First, disclaimer, I love all my clients. I love all my searches. But I'm going to say that my favorite search to date was Valparaiso. They hired Charles Small, who was at Iowa State before taking that job. But I actually got to know Charles when he was at Arkansas. And that's when Marcus Sedberry, who was my director of student athlete development, had worked at Arkansas as well. And so I'll never forget when I was at Michigan State, in the organization that we worked within, the subgroup was called N4A. And so a lot of times when you're doing professional development, you want to go to places where your network can get you to where you really want to be, because I love the Midwest. I love it, but I'm a Southern girl, so I wanted to get back South. And so I remember going to a Region 2 meeting, and Arkansas, I mean, they still have a really good program and department now, but at that time, Julie Cromer, Eric Wood, Marcus Sedberry, Charles Small, John Fagg, Kevin Trainer. I mean, the list goes on. Man, Dorita Dawkins, like the list goes on in terms of just the phenomenal administrators that were there. And so when we were doing the Valpo search, President Padilla really had a vision for where they were trying to restore Valpo. I mean, everyone knows them for their basketball program, the classic shot with the Drew brothers, Homer Drew coaching, and things of that nature. It was just a really good place in terms of they really needed a transformational leader. And a lot of times what we talk about in our job is that you can fall in love with one kind of profile, but as you start to really listen to the people that interact with the department, that have been impacted by the department, what have you, there are other things that kind of come to the surface that you feel like this person may actually really have the skill set that you need to really take this department to the next level. So for me, what I really enjoy about my job is that there are people that don't even know they impacted me when I was coming up in my career that I've always kept my eye on. And so now that I have an opportunity to engage people, I don't have a vote or say in who they hire. But if you've got an opportunity to even be brought into a process, that's half the battle of just really allowing someone to really hear your story. And the ways in which Charles thinks about things, his strategy, his plan and vision alongside with that of President Padilla and just Valpo in general, was just something exciting. And so being able to go through that process with Charles was amazing. And then Charles actually brought me in to lead on his men's basketball coach search this past year, where they hired Roger Powell. And that was the first men's basketball search that I had brought in on my own and led. And so when you think about the process for that, you need people that believe in you. And that's something you keep hearing me say throughout this interview: believe, believe, believe. Like if you have someone that will take a chance on you and then come in and build something special with you, you can't trade that for the world. And I'll never forget Saturday morning, Charles and I from 8 to 12 went through 40 coaches. A lot of people don't know that. They think that we just get the super hot coach that's out there. I mean, we are calling about people. I'm interviewing coaches like, what's your defensive philosophy? What do you think about this region? How are you going to recruit? I mean, we're putting guys to the test to really make sure that they can help and partner with Charles and the president and where Valpo is trying to go. So to that extent, that was just my favorite athletic director search. Now, Charles is still very early in his tenure, so there's still work to be done. But seeing the pieces that they're starting to put in place, it reminds me a lot about UCF. And that, to me, is my ultimate source of inspiration, because a lot of people counted us out. They didn't think that UCF would ever be a Power Five, or that we could really be a rival to be reckoned with. And so from that standpoint, that's been my favorite search to date, just because from the entire leadership, top to bottom, you can tell that they believe. And it's also a faith-based institution. So when you think about the actual prevalence of faith and actually believing in something or the greater good, it was just a really good search for us to be a part of. And I'm just excited for what they're going to be able to do in the future.
So you over the course of your UCF career, you ended up doing a few firsts for the program. You ended up being the first multi-time honorable mention All-America selection. First one to do that until a certain other player came by later. And then you also became one of the program's leading blockers, blockers only coming short of one Tyra Turner, who went on to play professionally on the beach. So what was it like for you now that, like, ever since you kind of left UCF, to look back at your kind of place in this program's history?
It's been amazing. I think some people, when you see a program continue to excel, it gives you kind of mixed feelings, right? Let's be real about it, because you don't want people to forget about you, but at the same time, like, that's not what a team is about. When I went to UCF, for me, it was more so about being able to pay it forward. Like you hear in my career, like you hear in my decision to get involved with collegiate athletics, I wanted to be able to pay it forward so that people had the same positive experience that I did. And so for me, when I see McKenna Melville or like other players come in and break, not my records, but break records, right? That's what it's for. Like, when I was getting recruited, the only banner we had up on the wall was from 2003. We win conference in 2014, and then they go on to win conference like 4 times in a row or something like insane. And so I remember following girls on Instagram and seeing them show their rings, and now they're on every single finger that they have. And like I said, that's what you want for a program. Like, when I look at some of the big time programs that I'm around, a Georgia Tech, a Florida, I mean, people that are right in my vicinity, and how passionate their fan base is and their alumni. I mean, everyone at my job is like a Georgia grad, right? This weekend, I'm going to homecoming with Georgia versus Mizzou. It's going to be a great time. But I want people to be able to talk about UCF the way my colleagues talk about Georgia. And so for me, it's an inspiring thing because, again, we believed in something special. And because of the success we were able to have, that's what attracts a McKenna Melville. I mean, when Todd was telling me about some of the girls that they were getting out of the transfer portal, I was stunned. Like, these are big time programs that you're stealing these girls from, and stealing in a positive way, because they respect what you're doing. And that's all I ever wanted for UCF, is for people to respect what it was that we were building and where we were trying to go. So for me, it's been incredible. I love it. I love seeing people break records. I love seeing girls or young women have even better careers than what I have, because I know the confidence it instills within you. I know the opportunities that you now have access to, and to be able to come back and share in a mutual experience that everyone has, whether they graduated in 1990, 2015, or 2045. Everyone has a special piece that they remember about UCF. And to me, that's the most important thing when you really think about developing a program, and helping to get it to a place where you see so many other programs today.
Well, in a lot of ways, McKenna Melville, I think, in a way, helped you get into the Hall of Fame, because what happens when you have a generational player like Melville, people like Bryson, who just started covering and gets hooked on the volleyball, is like, well, where does she rank all the time? So now your name gets brought up again, right? Like, that's kind of how that works. With Tyra Harper Turner, obviously, Renata Menchikova, Jenny Frank, because you probably heard about Jenny Frank.
I mean, that was the person in the Ring of Honor before I was. And I remember, I'll never forget. So I was at the all skills camp. That's when UCF had made the offer to me, or whatever, they were all compliant, whatever the term is. And I remember sitting in Todd's office, and, he's like, we'd like to offer you a scholarship. And I'm like blown away, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, again, I'm 16 and I'm getting my first scholarship offer. And I remember, being so excited, calling my mom, telling them that I wanted to verbally commit to UCF, and then going downstairs and looking at Jenny Frank's banner on the wall and hoping one day I could get into it. That's why I told you, like, the Ring of Honor last year, I mean, the Hall of Fame is incredible, right? But you don't think about going into the Hall of Fame. You just think about your program specifically. And so what I always used to think about is, how are we going to carry on the 2003 team's legacy? It's been 10 years since we've been back to even the even the NCAA tournament. So for me, it was never about winning a national championship or being an All-American. I just wanted to win a conference championship so that people that played before us, that paved the way for us, knew that that did not go unnoticed. Every day I walked in that gym, I looked at that banner and I thought, how am I helping the team to get there? And so you're exactly right. And just, we see it. I mean, we see Nebraska, 93,000 fans watching that game, Wisconsin versus Marquette filling out Pfizer Arena. Like, we see the game growing. So all you need is more spectators. And then just like that, it becomes a snowball effect. Now you're watching all the games. Now you're going to high school games. Now you're going to club games. Like, it's just about getting more exposure, because exposure leads to expansion. And when you have players that can draw the eyes and attention to your program, the opportunities beyond that become limitless.
How do you feel about, because you mentioned carrying on the 2003 team's legacy, how do you feel about how the programs like of the, 2017, 18, 19 and all them, how do you feel about how they've carried on your legacy? Because since then, Anne-Marie Watson and Narissa Moravec teamed up to be one of the best blocking duos the program has ever seen. Claudia Dillon and Abby Hansen, you mentioned them coming in the transfer portal. I'd argue that this is the first middle blocking leading offense that I think UCF has seen in a little while because of the McKenna Melville era. So how do you feel that, that those subsequent teams have carried on your legacy, like how you did with the 2003 team?
I'm so proud of them. Like, even when I was down there last year, I mean, I couldn't express to them how great I felt about what it was that they were doing. Like, being in the gym, seeing just the electric atmosphere from the band to the cheerleaders to the fans to the little girls in the stands, looking up at them. Like, we need more representation, and especially like not let, it's just this, demographic that is not thought about or whatever, but being a tall woman. Like, when I was doing the University of Washington AD search, Tina Langley, their women's basketball coach, was out there, and we were just talking, you talk to people that are a part of the interviews. And she was saying that sometimes she even brings in like either an executive coach or a coach or something to help her young women stand up and be proud to wear heels and be tall or whatever the situation is, because in society, you don't see a lot of that. You see a lot of smaller women, or, you feel like you're kind of an outcast because you're 6'1" and above, or whatever the situation may be. I have a little sister, she's 4, and I look at her hands, I look at her feet. I know she's going to be big. I know she's going to be. So little Jamie is going to be with me at my Hall of Fame induction. She's so excited. I just took her to a volleyball game a couple weeks ago up at Georgia. But, from that standpoint, I'm proud because these girls represent more than just insane athleticism. They represent what it means to be a woman and how multifaceted it is, from your confidence, from the way you carry yourself. I mean, people all the time ask me, like, you're okay wearing heels? I most certainly am okay, because either way, I'm either 6'1" or I'm 6'5" today. So you're going to see me no matter what I'm doing. But from that standpoint, that's what has allowed me to excel in my career. Like, I'm in a very male-dominated industry. So if you don't know how to find your voice, if you don't know how to be confident in your identity and what you bring to the table and what value you bring without having someone else have to tell you that to me, that's what is generational success. That is what we're here for. And like I said, with women's programs, like, I laugh because back in the day, outside of the amazing work that, the Black and Gold Banneret used to do, they didn't even used to take pictures of us. They used to come to one conference tournament, and that was the only, or not, yeah, one just preseason tournament, and that was the only time they would take pictures of us. I don't have film. I don't have anything that the players of today have, and that's okay. That's not something that I'm mad about, because now you're starting to see the importance of showcasing all of your sports, whether they're revenue generating, non-revenue generating, Olympic, whatever you want to call the sports. That's what it's about. It's about getting eyes on things where girls and guys and whoever are contributing to get more exposure. So to me, that's what I'm really proud of. And I mean, look, we talked about expanding the locker room when I was there as a student athlete. They just now expanded that locker room. And it's insane. When you walk into that, I'm like, there's no way that you guys have this much space where you can really come, build community, be with your teammates, and enjoy doing that. So for me, it's not just about what we see on TV or what we see on the internet. It's about the student athlete experience, a student athlete only dining hall. That's not volleyball, but that's all of the success of our teams, being able to get people to invest in that. Like having your study hall right next door to the dorms versus getting on your beach cruiser like we used to do back in the day and ride over to the old Wayne Dent by the rec center. Like there are improvements that come over time where if you don't have the success, people can't invest in it. So you've got to get it there and then see what it becomes. So to me, I'm just proud of not only what UCF volleyball is doing, but what all of our sports are doing. And it took those classes early on to be able to set the tone for where we are today.
I have a
You should see
feeling
the venues going along.
yeah, Venue's doing pretty well. Bryson, I think she's going to do fine in her speech, by the way, for the Hall of Fame, right? I think she's
I
going
hope
to do
so.
fine. We're speaking with DeLaina Sarden here. Let me ask you, you mentioned all that, but I want to bring you to 2014 because that's an important year. Because
Yeah.
you mentioned it, there was a drought. Volleyball had not been to the NCAA tournament since 2003. Todd Dagenet took over the program in 08. Took a long time. I mean, there weren't immediate results. And you know
Yeah.
how that what that means in the industry sometimes. You don't
Yeah.
get that long of a period of time with
Yeah.
him and assistant Michelle Chapman, who you both you've brought up. You're a game changer from that standpoint. But
Well,
take
thank
me
you.
through specifically 2014. What clicked that year that was able to get the program back to the NCAA tournament? You won the American Conference Championship, but you had made grounds because I want to say the year before you had made the championship game of the conference tournament or something like that.
Yeah, man, don't remind
All
me,
right,
Eric. Don't remind
but no,
me.
that was
Like it
building
was,
blocks. That was part of the
yes,
process,
they were
right?
building blocks. I'm gonna keep it real simple. To be honest with you, it was our transfers. It was Kia Bright, it was Jayla Hervey, it was Jade Hayes, it was Abby Fleener. Like I said, we had been trying to run a 6-2 for the longest. And it was really hard for us to get the pieces that we needed because even when you look at UCF volleyball and you start to look at each position, outsides, middles, right sides, your defensive or your backcourt, everyone kind of looked the same, right? So over the years, it was the same body type, it was the same kind of, swing and things of that nature. And as we were really starting to get that middle dominant offense together, the thing about that is everyone has to be an offensive option because you have to stress the defense or your opponent so that you can get that going. So then we changed what our outsides looked like. Jayla Hervey and Kia Bright were like 5'9", 5'10", springing is all get out. I mean, they soared through the air. So now when you're thinking about your backcourt getting you the passes that you need, passing in the tempo, where it's a really fast offense. So you don't know if it's going to me or Kay. You don't know if it's going to Key or Jay. And then you have Lauren Corey, 6'5" Australian right side hitter that's got a hammer of an arm. Or you flip that with Abby Fleener, transfer from DePaul, that can run a slide, which is another quick tempo swing. So constantly your opponent is having to scout for every single person on the court. And then now we have 6 rotation outsides. So now we have a backcourt offensive attack. So if it's not one of us in the front row, now you can set Kia or Jayla back row. So you've got to be prepared for everything that's coming. So for me, that's what I felt like we really needed because every year, and you can fact check me on this, but every year I felt like we finished like third in conference. And especially as a group of 5, you don't get multiple bids to the tournament. You have to win your conference. So in both years in Conference USA, we had a conference tournament, didn't win, sad. And then in the American, we didn't have a conference tournament. So you had to win the season outright. And I will never forget in 2014, we had to play a round robin. So you had to play everyone twice. If you go on my Instagram to this day, we opened with SMU. That was our opponent. SMU was so hard. They've always had a really good program. And I remember saying that opening conference day, whoever wins this game is going to win conference. I said that. It's on my Instagram. You can go on my Instagram and you will see it. But we beat SMU in 5, and we literally win by 2 points in the 5th set. I mean, that's how you win. But the score is literally 13-15 or whatever it comes down to. It comes down to the wire. We go through the first, half of the season. We're approaching the second round, and we go to Temple. We lose. So I'm like getting stressed because I'm like, we do this every year. And mind you, it's my senior year. So it's like make or break now. You know what I'm saying? Like we're either going to do this or we're not. So we lose at Temple, and I'm like starting to get stressed because then it's like more mental things and like how do you coach someone through a mental challenge, right? Like we've got the talent, but it's about your performance on the court. So we go, we lose to Temple, and then I'll never forget, we have a doubleheader against Tulsa. And what I mean by doubleheader is that football is playing Tulsa that evening as well. So it pushes our game up like really early. So now you're like playing at a time you don't really play at. We lose in 5. I had like 32 kills that game or something crazy. And what that made me realize is that I cannot win this by myself. So I've got to adjust my leadership and my presence on the court to make sure that I'm bringing my teammates along with me, because even though I'm getting all these kills, we're not winning. So I remember I had a very stern conversation with my teammates when we went to the locker room, because guess who we were playing on Sunday? SMU. And I was like, we have to win. Like something has got to change here where we've got to beat SMU. And I'll never forget, we had our Nights for Nights game. So in addition to like your rivalry game, so when we would really try to pack the house for USF, we also asked all of the different teams of like, who's your rival, right? So then volleyball said SMU. So they did a really good job of promoting that game, especially for a Sunday. I'll never forget, it's standing room only. We run out of subs. The setter of the year at SMU at the time, I forget her name, but she was a stud. She goes down. She's injured. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I would never wish bad on someone, but this is like a really good advantage for us because now their backup setter has to come in. And I knew their middles were tough, their outsides were rough, and their libero was like lights out. I mean, she dug everything. Like there was nothing outside of her range that she couldn't get. It's standing room only. We're battling, like we're going back and forth. We go to the 5th set. And I'm like, look, y'all, this is it. Like this game, just like opening, this game is what's going to allow us to have the confidence to finish strong. We run out of subs. It's crazy. Everyone's on their feet. And we end up beating SMU again, 2 points in the 5th set. And Abby Fleener is like the queen of this quote, but she literally goes, guys, we just need 2 points. And I'm like, wow, I never thought about that before. No, obviously we just need 2 points. Like, obviously we need that. But at that time, it was insane. And we beat SMU. And then I forget, the sequence after that. But the next thing was we were going to like Tulane, Houston, that matchup. And we end up clinching conference with the win over Houston. And so like standing on the court, it was their senior night, which is always great to beat a team on their senior night. Like that's just what you want to do. And so I'll never forget that moment of clinching the American in 2014, where you still have more games to play, but no matter what happens, we're going to be the champions of this conference. So to me, it was literally like a dream senior year. But most importantly, it was everything that Todd and Michelle told me in 2010, is that if you buy in and you do what we ask you to do, this is the result that we can get to. And it was just like, again, believing in a vision and doing your part and bringing people along with you. So I'll never forget that season. It was magical. Like I can recall plays. I can recall being at USF, standing room only, where like the rumors started to talk about me getting player of the year for the conference because, again, we ran out of subs. Your girl had to play back row. And I was just like, hit me. Like whatever is coming back here. I dug a ball with my foot. Like we were all trying extremely hard to do our part. And that's all we needed was people to be proud of the position that they played, do your part, and everything else will take care of the rest. And one of the things Todd always said is trust the process. If you focus too much on the outcome, you get distracted, you deviate. But if you trust the process, it almost always yields an even better outcome than what you anticipated in the first, when you first came up with the process. So from that standpoint, it was just like magical. Like thinking about it now, I'm like, trying not to get emotional because I thought about how intense that year was, because it was all of us. We graduated 6 of 8 starters that year. Me, Ashley, Lauren, Marie, Jade, and then who was the other senior? Oh, and Kay. So your whole team was graduating. So it was like everybody's like make or break year. We either do this now or we don't. Yeah. So it was just like the Super Six. That was the whole campaign that year, was our 6 seniors. And it was like, y'all, we got to do this. We have been going to battle for the last 4 years. This is our time to do it. So you can see I'm like getting animated about it now because I just think about how we all collectively said we are going to do this. and the effort, even in the off season when we were training that spring, and we had Ben O'Donnell who just worked us to death. Like, oh my gosh, that was the hardest spring and summer I'd ever had. But it was all for the greater good of winning that championship, going to the NCAA tournament. I obviously don't like losing to Miami in 5 because I felt like we should have beat them. But the point is that we set out to accomplish what our initial goal was, and that was to win a conference championship.
And it did. And obviously, Coach Dagenet would go on with that.
Yes.
And, they said, I want to ask you first, for people like Bryson who did not get the privilege to see you play in person, describe to someone DeLaina Sarden, the volleyball player. What is on the court?
Oh man, the first word that comes to mind is like just a dog. Like, that's how I'm going to describe it. I mean, the dog days, grinding. I mean, because like I said, I didn't start playing volleyball until I was 16. So every year was like a growth year for me. Every year, even when I got to UCF, I'll never forget my freshman year. I did not even play in the preseason. Like, I think I maybe played 2 points the entire preseason. And like every practice, I mean, they broke down everything that I did. I had to redo my swing. I had to look at my hand contact. I mean, they really made you a student of the game. And that's what I was. I had my sweatband on. I will never forget Whit for getting me the black, gold, and white sweatbands because, I started with that red one back in the day. But as soon as that sweatband would go on my head, have a little French braid to the side, it was over with. It was over with. And I was locked in. It was just like, and then also the connection. I mean, Dana Fott was a great setter, but Marie Ritarova, I mean, we had a connection and a chemistry like no other. And like at times I had to tell her, don't set me. Like, I know you can find me anywhere that I am on the court, but don't set me right now. But it was just like my ability to understand the game and slow things down in my mind, where it was like see ball, hit ball, kill. That's how it was. My efficiency, my kills, everything about it was just a dog. Like, I was just in there to fight until the end. And it was all fun. Like, I never got too riled up to the point where I couldn't play or I was so nervous that I couldn't perform. It was just play your part. And I'll never forget, we were at Cincinnati. Maria had gone down with a concussion, and like offensively, I just was not there. And Michelle told me that's where, when you talk about those leading block stats, she was like, DeLaina, if you can't contribute offensively, contribute defensively. Lock in. There's always a role that you can play, even if you're not playing the role that you usually do. And just taking that, that's what I thought. And I look at Deion Sanders. I know Colorado has had their up and down year, but the thing he talked about is he's got L's on people's jerseys for leaders, and he's got D's on people's jerseys for dogs. And I'm a dog. Like, I'm a leader, of course, but for me, even when I was voted team captain my sophomore year, I turned it down. I said, I appreciate the team seeing me in this way, and I appreciate you guys thinking that I can lead you, but I'm not a leader in that way. I'm a leader by example. So if you get behind me and you see what I'm doing, I'm working, I'm grinding, I'm taking care of what I need to do in the classroom, I'm making sure I'm doing what I need to do in rehab, like everything that we've got to do to really make this thing work, I'm doing it. You've got some people that can advocate for the team. You've got some people that are more community focused and leadership and things of that nature. But for me, I am a dog. And I know how to work. I know how to grind. And that's just how I am now. Like, my job now is intense. Like, it has its up and down moments. You got to get into the weeds on things. You got to be present. You got to have energy. And that's what I do. So if there was one way to describe my game, it would be a dog. I am a dog.
Well, and that turned into being a 3-time AVCA All-American. Do you remember the first time you found out you were an All-American?
Yeah. Well, no. Oh man, I feel bad. No, I don't really remember the All-American thing. What I remember is Player of the Year. When I got that my senior year.
Okay.
Yeah, when I got that my senior year, because when Todd told me, I just started crying. Like, I remember being in his office and just crying, because middle blockers don't get that. Like, I think that's what people miss. And that's what I want them to understand is like, middle blockers don't get that. That's why I say a dog. Like, you're there to help your teammates. Like, if I can get you a little split in that block, that's my kill. And that's what we used to joke about. Like, you don't have assists as a hitter, right? But like, that's my assist. So it's like, this is a very grunt position. It's one of the hardest positions in volleyball. You're going both ways. You're doing everything you got to do. So the fact that the other coaches in the league respected my game enough to say she deserves that honor. You just don't see that. So to me, everything about our style of play and what we did, that's the thing I remember, because then after I found out that I was player of the year, I had also won like an academic award for the American as well. And that was something I really tried, because a lot of people also don't know. I was in study hall all 4 years. I was a good student. I always had above a 3.0, but I was in study hall all 4 years. So like the amount of focus and attention I put into being the good student athlete, like I was trying hard. I was very much trying hard, and it paid off, because now I got a master's, and now I'm thinking about getting a second master's. So from that standpoint, the experience I had as a student athlete is what told me you can do anything that you put your mind to.
That's pretty good. I like that description very well. What was it like playing for Coach Dagenet and Michelle Chapman, who you brought up was the assistant, longtime assistant for him during your time there?
Yeah, well, I'll start with Michelle, big sister, like best friend, like. And I remember, when I was getting recruited, Florida had actually sent me an interest letter as well. I had actually gone to their team camp, and so was starting to get some traction there. And I remember thinking, do you want to go to Florida and hope to be like Michelle, or do you want to go to UCF and be trained like Michelle? And if there's one person's track record and resume you need to look at, it is Michelle Chapman. She played when one of their middles went down. She transitioned into the middle. Like, she was your utility player of whatever I need to do, I'm going to do it. And when I talk to you about being 16 and like not yet having reached my full potential, I needed to be trained by somebody that was going to push me to my limits, that wasn't going to say, oh, because you're a middle, you can't play defense, or oh, because you're a middle, we're not going to expect that of you. They expected everything from me and more. So Michelle is literally the primary reason why I went to UCF, because I wanted to be some version of her, obviously DeLaina's version of Michelle. But then for Todd, Todorino, that was my guy. And the fact that he's now the head coach of Atlanta Vibe here in Atlanta, I told Todd, I said, you can't get enough of me, man. You always got to be with me. But he was my guy. Like, Todd believed in us. He instilled within me discipline. I mean, he's the reason why I understand trusting the process, why I can submit to things that I don't necessarily understand in the moment, but I know that if I just do what I'm told and I follow directions, it'll pay off for me. But Todd is my guy. Like, I talked to him about everything. And even like I said, in the last year that I've had, when I had to make really hard decisions, I talked to Todd about it. Like, he was the one that was instrumental in me going to Michigan State, because Todd had coached at Michigan State as well. So going to a place that you're not familiar with, but having people that know your coach and that they know and that they can speak to, Todd fills so many spaces for me. I will forever be indebted to him for giving me an opportunity, because like I said, if you guys could have seen me at 16, that footwork was a little crazy. Okay. I'm surprised I got a Division I scholarship, to be honest with you. So to have someone that said, this is someone that we need in our program, and this is someone we're going to build a legacy from. I mean, Todd had a 15-year career at UCF, and we were, I think, maybe his second or third recruiting class, like full recruiting class. Like, I mean, that's what I'm saying. You believe in the coach, you believe in the vision, and he brings to fruition everything he told you he was going to do. Like, that's very rare that people have an experience like that.
It feel weird for you when you see now UCF? He's not there. I mean, he's there. He's in the stands. Bryce would know, because he runs into him all the time. But he's not in the bench. Jenny Mauer's taken over. He's had a good first year. But were you surprised when he decided to move on like this offseason and, like you said, take over the Atlanta Vibe with his new pro league?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I wasn't surprised, because in the business that I do, it's very rare that you have a long tenure like that. And I know Todd's ambitions. I know he wanted to be able to have an impact and have influence at even greater levels than just what he was doing at UCF. And there's nothing wrong with that. Ambition is a good thing. Having new challenges that you want to put yourself to, that's not a bad thing. So I wasn't surprised that I was surprised that he'd taken that route, but I wasn't surprised that he had moved on. But even more importantly, Jenny is phenomenal. I actually interviewed Jenny when I was done playing. So Todd had brought me in to interview Jenny and the other candidate when he was looking to replace Michelle. So from that standpoint, I always felt like Jenny was going to be a good number 2 for Todd, because she could balance him really well. Todd can be a bit much at times. so she could balance him very well. And she had been a head coach before. So for Todd, I really wanted him at some point to have a better work-life balance or work-life integration, and having someone that you can trust to delegate things to. I thought Jenny was a perfect match for that. And so even when Chris McFarland had called me when Todd resigned, resigned to take the other job, he asked me what we should do from a search perspective. And so we went through kind of some names that they were considering, because again, that's my job. And so we went through some names that they were considering. And I remember, just making the suggestion of like, look, where you are in the season, Jenny's a great choice. She's been there the entire time. She's been a head coach before. Give her the opportunity, because right now the girls want her. You want to have that continuity moving into the Big 12. Okay. You don't want to bring in an entirely new person and give them no time to recruit, no time to actually get to know the girls. So this is a good option. And look at it. She's killing it right now. Like, aside from, the Baylor loss and things, and it's hard to play a team back to back. Like, those are hard things to do. And these are top 20 ranked programs. Like, you got to give people their flowers when they're due. Like, she's doing a phenomenal job. That staff that she's put together is great. Like, I'm excited to meet everyone when I go down there. So yeah, like, I mean, it's weird not seeing Todd in the stands, but at the same time, growth and change is a part of life. And I'm glad that Todd is happy. I'm glad that he's in the city. I'm glad, again, to see the way that the sport of volleyball is growing. When I ran into Todd, we were at the Georgia Tech UGA volleyball game, and they had packed out McCamish. And there they are selling the season tickets and getting the word out about Atlanta Vibe and the league that they're going to be starting. It's a great option for American players that want to stay home. It's a great option for international players that want to come play in the United States. So all in all, it's just been a great transition and change for everybody involved. I've grown, Todd's grown, Jenny's growing, other players are growing, UCF is growing. I mean, we are just growing, and you can't be mad at that. Like, that's what you want out of life, is to grow and reach new levels, so that when you look back on it, you don't have any what ifs, or what if I had done this? What if I had done that? You're doing exactly what you feel like you were called to do. And like I said at the beginning, that's what life is about. Hearing the call and taking action.
It's almost like Jenny was your first search that you did.
Yeah, a little bit, actually, a little bit, Bryson. Yeah.
A little bit of a premonition of what you do later.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I
never even thought about that.
So what is it like? What is it like for you? Because, you were involved in the process to bring her on in the first place as an assistant. So what has it been like now to kind of see that evolve into her as a head coach, and now doing, I would argue, like, I don't, would you say that this year's team was kind of a middle dominant offense again?
So I will be honest, I haven't been able to catch a lot of the games. So I've only just been able to track like what the actual scores are. So I won't be able to comment as much on the offense. I'll be able to see more of that when I see them play that Thursday against BYU. But, what I will say for Jenny is that, well, let me back up. When I do these athletic director searches, we do these things called listening sessions. So we'll talk to staff, head coaches, student athletes, anyone that kind of interacts or interfaces with the position. We want to get their feedback. And one of the things that, or one of the groups that I talk to a lot are the alumni, and they talk about their connection to the institution. Some people still have it, some people don't, some people want it. And the thing that I really appreciate about Jenny is that she has really tried to bring people back into the mix, create that connection for them, and just let them know that you're not forgotten. You may have graduated 20, 30 years ago. We're trying to do everything that we can to bring you in. Her and I talk, not a lot because she's a head coach now, so she's very busy. But even back in the day when I would share my feedback about where the team was, where the team was going, how proud of us we were, but still room for improvement, because I would like to see us advance past the second round of the tournament if we can, and things of that nature. But she's always been really receptive to that. And you can tell that she believes in it. You can tell that she's really trying to take in that input so it doesn't feel as if things are being made in a vacuum. And she really does pay homage to the girls that came before, even the girls that she knew, because I didn't play for Jenny. So the fact that I have a connection where I can literally text her or call her and I know she's going to pick up, that speaks volumes for not only her abilities and her competency as a coach, but her leadership and understanding that we're only as good as all of us put together. So I'm really proud of what Jenny has been able to do with the program and really being able to continue on from what Todd was able to build without missing a beat.
Yeah. I'll never forget, by the way, last year, Ring of Honor, you're honored. You're watching the match, and I think you were interviewed during our broadcast. and they asked you about the team, and you were like, you were blown away by McKenna Melville's power.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yes.
I don't want any of that.
Yeah, I didn't. She was a force to be reckoned with. Like I said, I mean, McKenna was just amazing. And like I said, when you can have a dominant outside hitter like that, it's a dime a dozen because so many girls play outside. But to have that presence where, I mean, McKenna would get a kill out of a garbage set. Like you would see that thing come from like the back corner and she somehow gets on top of it and just wails on it. But even watching her play, you could tell she had such a nice demeanor. Like she was friendly, she was genuine. Every time I interacted with her, it was never like, oh, like get this old lady out of here. Like, who is this lady that's talking to me right now? You could tell that she was just a really kind spirit. And even all the other girls that I've been able to connect with through social media, like that's been a really great thing for us as well. But yeah, like, I mean, just watching her play and watching her swing out of the backcourt was like, I want no parts of that.
She'll be in the Hall of Fame about 7 years or so from now, joining
Most
you.
definitely. Look, I'm not surprised if she gets called next year. I'm be honest with you. I'm not surprised.
You think they break the rule? They just make it one time.
Yeah,
Exception.
exactly.
Yeah, some people were calling for that, but you got to get in first, and that'll be our last question, because otherwise we'd be talking for hours. And
yes,
you have a life. I don't, but you do. November 10th, you're going to join a historic class, one of the largest ever. You're going to be part of what it's going to be known as the first ever UCF Hall of Fame class in the Big 12 as a member of the Big 12. You're joining the late Dr. John Hitt, who's your university's president while you were a student there. The late Gene McDowell was a football coach and an AD back in UCF, helped build the football program, which, as you know, is very important in college athletics, obviously.
Hugely important.
You're joining the UCF cheerleading national championship team with Linda Gooch, who's going to be there forever.
Yep.
Kyle Bono, UCF baseball pitcher. Mark Daniels, the voice of UCF athletics, football, basketball, everybody's heard. Shelby Turnier, who you both were at the same time at the same school there, doing both your thing, which was kind of cool for me because I covered both of you, obviously.
Yeah.
And then obviously, what does it mean to be joining that class at this time?
You know, I've been thinking about that because I've been trying to write, my Hall of Fame speech. I don't really want to be so scripted. I want to have some main things that I want to talk about and just kind of flow from the heart, because we only have 6 minutes, which means in theory you only have 5 minutes because they do have to keep everything going. But, for me, it's really special because I came in during a transition. And when we were in Conference USA, we were trying to build a program entirely, an entire athletic department that was going to allow us to transition in what the American was, where you see Houston, you see Cincinnati, you see UCF, seeing those teams now transition into the Big 12. And the fact that I wanted to be a part of a legacy in that way and to be inducted in this new transition for us, I feel like it's fitting. I feel like it's destiny. I feel like it's fate. And I have tremendous respect for everyone that is going in with me, but you guys do not understand how excited I am to be going in with President Hitt. His vision of aligning academics with athletics and how that could really a campus, it starts from the top down. You have to have leadership and alignment. That's what I do in my job today. If the president is not on board, it's not going to happen in athletics. You have to have someone that really believes in that. And Dr. Hitt used to be at our games with his wife. I mean, he traveled with us. He was with us all the time. You don't see presidents doing that, especially for volleyball. You see them at basketball, you see them at football, but you don't see that. So to have a real supporter of UCF athletics, to me, when I saw that list come out, I was so excited. I couldn't believe that I was going in with Dr. Hitt. So for me, it's just the full circle moment of going back in this transition, because that's where I believed UCF could be. So that's insane to me. And then going in with literally the man that kind of made all of this happen, insane. So to me, it's just like an incredible moment. And like I said, it's destiny. It's your purpose. It's your calling. And when you just hear that call, some answer it, some don't. And I'm really glad that I answered that call.
Well, I'm glad you did too. And I'm glad you're going in on this class because, you're always one of my favorites. I'm not gonna lie to you. Shelby's my girl, so she's gonna take priority in this class.
No offense taken. No offense taken.
But no, well deserved, and it's going to be cool to have that title, Hall of Famer. Although I will miss calling you now. We can't call you anymore the 17th greatest UCF female athlete according to Black and Gold Banner. Can we
But
still
I
use
look,
that?
and I always will appreciate you putting me at 17 because that is a magic number
I
for
know
me.
that
So
was your
I was
number.
like,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you, thank you. To even make the list is an honor, but especially like I said, 17 means a lot to me. So I was very excited to be 17th on the list.
I knew 17 was a special number for you, so I figured you would like that. You would have no issues being ranked that number in particular.
Right. No issues at all.
Hall of Famer DeLaina Sarden will be inducted November 10th with that great UCF Athletic Hall of Fame class. Thank you so much for taking the time for a busy schedule, and I can't wait to see you here in person for the ceremony. But thanks for everything you've done for UCF, and thanks for talking to us.
No, thanks for having me. You guys are the bomb.com. You know that. Since our days back in 2011, we were always there together. So now I appreciate everybody and the support. And like I said, I just appreciate you guys having me on just to tell a little bit more about my story before the big day.